figs appear quite moist. Are they newly arrived?
Indeed, sir. The best of the harvest.
The November air carries the first true bite of winter as the sun rises late over the manor house. Frost has settled across the fields in delicate patterns, each blade of grass transformed into something crystalline and temporary. Inside the great hall, the household is already stirring, though not with urgency. There is a different quality to the movement this morning, a sense of purpose that will build slowly over the coming weeks. The steward has been awake since before dawn, reviewing the household accounts by candlelight in his small chamber. His fingers, stained with ink, move down the columns of numbers as he calculates what will be needed for the Christmas season. This is not a task completed in a single morning. It is a meditation of sorts, a careful consideration of stores and provisions that must last through the 12 days of celebration and beyond, into the lean months of deep winter. In the kitchen, the head cook has begun her own preparations, though the actual Christmas feast is still weeks away. She inspects the stores of dried herbs hanging from the rafters, running her hands along the bundles of sage and thyme, rosemary and bay. Some are brittle now, their fragrance faded, and these she sets aside. The newer bundles harvested in late summer still hold their scent. She crushes a few leaves between her fingers, releasing their oils, and nods with satisfaction. The manor house itself seems to sense the approaching season. The great hall, where the Christmas festivities will unfold, stands quiet now in the early morning light. The long tables have been pushed to the walls, and the floor rushes, which have grown stale and compressed over the autumn months, will soon need to be replaced. But not yet. There is time. Everything in these preparations moves with deliberate slowness, each task given its proper place in the rhythm of the weeks ahead. A serving girl enters the hall carrying fresh candles, their wax still soft from the chandler's workshop. She places them carefully in the wall sconces, replacing the stubs that have burned down to nearly nothing. The old wax will be melted down and used again. Nothing is wasted in a medieval household, particularly not as winter deepens, and resources become more precious. She works methodically, moving from sconce to sconce, her footsteps echoing softly in the empty space. Outside, the manor's grounds are beginning their own slow transformation. The gardener walks the paths between the dormant beds, noting which evergreen plants have thrived through the autumn. Holly bushes, dark and glossy, even in November's grey light, will be needed for decorating the hall. But he does not cut them yet. They will be freshest if harvested closer to Christmas Day itself. For now, he simply observes, planning in his mind where he will make his cuts, which branches can be spared without damaging the plants. In the orchard, bare branches reach toward a pale sky. Most of the fruit was harvested months ago, preserved in honey, or dried in the sun, stored in the cool darkness of the manor's cellars. But a few apples remain, small and wrinkled, clinging stubbornly to the highest branches. Birds have been at them, pecking away the softest parts. These forgotten fruits will not be gathered. They belong to the winter now, to the creatures who will need them more as the season deepens. The lord of the manor rises late, as is his custom. His chamber is one of the few rooms in the house with glass in the windows, a luxury that keeps out the worst of the cold while still admitting the weak November sunlight. He dresses slowly, assisted by his body servant, and contemplates the weeks ahead. Christmas at the manor is not merely a religious observance, though it is certainly that. It is also a statement of hospitality, of generosity, of his position in the social order of the countryside. He will be expected to feast not only his family and household, but also his tenants, the local clergy, perhaps minor nobility from neighbouring estates. The preparations for such an undertaking require careful thought, too little provision, and he risks appearing miserly. Too much, and he demonstrates poor stewardship of his resources. It is a balance, like so many things in medieval life, that must be struck with care and consideration. In the solar, the lady of the manor sits with her women, their needlework spread across their laps. They are working on altar cloths for the manor's chapel, fine linen embroidered with gold thread in patterns of holly and ivy. The work is painstaking, each stitch placed with precision. They will not finish these pieces for weeks yet, and that is as it should be. The slow accumulation of stitches, the gradual emergence of the pattern from blank cloth, mirrors the slow accumulation of Christmas preparations throughout the household. One of the younger women asks about the decorations for the hall, and the lady describes how it was done when she was a girl in her father's house. Garlands of evergreen wound around the pillars, branches of holly placed above each doorway, the scent of pine and cedar filling the rooms. Her voice is soft as she remembers, and the women listen while their needles continue their rhythmic work. A boy, one of the pages serving in the household, is sent to the village with a message for the reeve. The Lord requires an accounting of which tenants will be attending the Christmas feast. How many extra mouths must be fed? The boy walks the muddy track that leads from the manor house down to the cluster of cottages and the small stone church. Smoke rises from the thatched roofs, grey against the grey sky. Chickens scatter before him as he makes his way to the reeve's door. The reeve, a weathered man whose face shows the years of outdoor work, invite the boy inside. The cottage is dim and smoky, warmed by a central hearth where a pot of something simmers. The reeve's wife stirs it absently while the men talk. The accounting will take time to compile, the reeve explains. He must speak with each tenant household, determine who will come and who will not, how many children, whether any have elderly parents who will need assistance making the journey to the manor house. The boy nods, understanding that this is not a question that can be answered immediately. He accepts a cup of ale and a piece of bread, sits for a respectful interval, then begins his walk back to the manor. The message has been delivered. The wheels of preparation turn slowly, but they turn. Back at the manor, in the brewhouse, the alewife is considering the quantities of ale that will be needed. The household drinks ale every day, of course. It is safer than water, more nourishing than wine for daily consumption. But Christmas ale is different. It must be stronger, spiced with unusual ingredients, special enough to mark the season as distinct from ordinary time. She consults with the steward about quantities of grain, about the spices that will need to be purchased from travelling merchants. The conversation is technical, detailed. How much honey to sweeten the brew? Which spices will complement each other without overwhelming the fundamental character of the ale? These are questions that require experience, judgment, a sense of taste developed over many years of brewing. The alewife takes notes, using a piece of charcoal to mark figures on a small wooden board. She will begin the brewing in a few weeks, timing it so the ale reaches its peak flavor just as Christmas arrives. In the barns and outbuildings, other preparations are beginning in their own quiet way. The cowherd inspects his animals, noting which are in the best condition, which might be slaughtered to provide fresh meat for the feast. Cattle slaughtered in early winter, after they have fattened on the summer's grass, but before the lean months when they begin to lose condition, provide the finest meat. He makes his choices carefully, marking the chosen animals in his mind. The shepherd does the same among his flock. Sheep are valuable for their wool as much as their meat, but some of the older ewes, past their prime breeding years, will serve better as mutton for the Christmas table than as members of the breeding flock. These decisions are not made hastily. Each animal represents value, represents careful husbandry over years. The choice of which to cull and which to keep for another season requires thought and care. As the afternoon light begins to fade, the manor settles into its evening rhythms. Candles are lit in the hall. Fires are built up against the growing cold. The household gathers for the evening meal, a simple affair compared to what will come at Christmas. There is bread and cheese, a pottage of vegetables and barley, ale to wash it down. The conversation is quiet, tired from the day's work. But there is an undercurrent of anticipation now, a sense that something is beginning. The steward announces that the first purchases for Christmas will be made at the market next week. The cook mentions that she will need help in the kitchen as the feast day approaches. The Lord speaks briefly of his plans to send a messenger to neighboring estates, extending invitations to the Christmas celebrations. These small announcements, made casually over the evening meal, mark the formal beginning of the Christmas season's preparations. From now until the feast day itself, every task, every decision will be made with Christmas in mind. The household has committed itself to the work ahead, work that will unfold slowly over the coming weeks. After the meal, some of the household gather near the fire for a brief period before retiring to their chambers. One of the older servants, a man who has served in the household since he was a boy himself, tells a story about a Christmas long ago, when snow fell so heavily that the Lord could not reach the village church for midnight mass. They had held their own service here in the hall, he says, the household gathering around the chaplain as he conducted the liturgy. His voice is soft in the firelight, the memory distant but still vivid in his mind. The night deepens. One by one the household retires. Fires are banked, candles extinguished. The manor house settles into darkness and quiet. But something has changed, subtly, in the rhythm of the household. The great wheel of the year is turning toward Christmas, and the preparations, slow and methodical, have begun. The November market is held in the village square, a muddy open space between the church and the largest of the cottages. Merchants have come from the nearby town, their carts laden with goods not available in this small rural community. The steward from the manor arrives early, accompanied by 2 serving men to carry purchases. The market is not yet crowded, the merchants still arranging their wares, calling out to each other in the cold morning air. The steward begins his rounds methodically. First, he seeks out the spice merchant, a man he has dealt with before, whose goods are generally reliable. The merchant's cart is a wonder of small packages and pouches, each containing precious substances brought from unimaginably distant places. Pepper from the east, cinnamon from beyond the known world, cloves and nutmeg and ginger, each more costly than the last. The steward negotiates carefully. The prices are high, as they always are for spices. But this is expected. He purchases a carefully measured amount of each, enough to flavour the Christmas dishes without bankrupting the manor's accounts. The spice merchant wraps each purchase in waxed cloth, seals them against moisture, and hands them over with warnings about storage. Keep them dry, he advises. Keep them away from strong light. The steward nods. He knows these things already, but the ritual of advice and acknowledgement is part of the transaction. Next, he visits a merchant selling dried fruits. Raisins from the south, dried figs, dates that have travelled incredibly long distances to end up here in this muddy English market square. These too are expensive, but necessary for the traditional Christmas dishes. The steward purchases several pounds of raisins, a smaller quantity of figs, a modest amount of dates. These will be used in pies and puddings, adding sweetness and richness to dishes that would otherwise be quite plain. The wine merchant is the next stop. Wine is drunk daily in the manor, but for Christmas something finer is required. The merchant offers samples, small cups poured from his best casks. The steward tastes each one thoughtfully, considering how it will pair with the planned menu. He is not selecting wine for his own pleasure, though he appreciates the better qualities of what he tastes. He is thinking of the Lord's palate, the expectations of guests, the overall impression that the Christmas feast will make. He settles on 2 casks of a decent red, deep and full-bodied, and 1 smaller cask of a sweeter wine for the ladies, and for drinking later in the evening when the heavy meal has been consumed. The wine merchant promises delivery within the week. The casks are too large and heavy to transport immediately. The steward makes a note of the arrangement, another item on his mental list of tasks to be completed, deliveries to be received and properly stored. At a stall selling fabric and thread, he purchases skeins of ribbon in deep red and green. These will be used to tie up small gifts, to decorate certain dishes when they are presented at table, to add festive colour throughout the hall. The ribbon seller, a woman with quick hands and a friendly manner, suggests a particular shade of green that she says will complement the holly and ivy that will decorate the hall. The steward agrees, appreciating her eye for such details. He spends some time at a stall selling candles and beeswax. The manor makes many of its own candles, but for Christmas, finer candles are needed. Pure beeswax candles burn brighter and cleaner than the tallow candles used for everyday purposes, and they do not produce the same unpleasant smell. He purchases enough beeswax candles for the high table and for the chapel. The rest of the hall will make do with tallow, but even there, new candles rather than the recycled stubs of everyday use. A merchant is selling glassware, delicate cups and bowls that seem impossibly fragile. The steward examines them with interest but does not purchase. The manor has sufficient serving vessels for the feast. However, he makes note of the merchant's presence. The Lord might wish to acquire some new pieces as gifts for important guests, a decision that will need to be made closer to Christmas itself. As the morning progresses, the market becomes more crowded. Villagers have come to sell their own modest goods, eggs and chickens, vegetables from their gardens, small cheeses. The steward purchases some of these as well, not for Christmas specifically, but for the household's general use. A woman is selling bundles of dried lavender, and he buys several. These will be scattered among the fresh rushes when the hall is prepared, adding their subtle scent to the evergreens and the wood smoke. By midday, the steward's purchases are complete. The serving men are laden with packages and bundles. They begin the walk back to the manor, moving slowly under their burdens. The steward walks beside them, mentally reviewing his purchases, considering what he has forgotten, what additional items will be needed as Christmas approaches. Back at the manor, the packages are carried directly to the storeroom, a secure chamber where valuable goods are kept. The steward personally oversees the proper storage of each item. The spices go on high shelves, away from any possibility of dampness. The dried fruits are placed in sealed containers to keep out mice and insects. The ribbons and candles are stored with the household linens. Each item has its place, its proper location in the ordered world of the manor's stores. The cook is pleased when she learns what has been purchased. That evening, she reviews her recipes, old parchments, and her own memory, considering which dishes she will prepare for the feast. A Christmas pie filled with meat and fruits and spices, a pudding rich with eggs and honey. Roasted meats, of course, several kinds, each prepared in the traditional manner. Her mind moves through the dishes, the order in which they will be prepared, the help she will need, the timing of each element. She discusses her plans with her assistant, a younger woman who has been learning the craft of cooking for several years now. They speak of temperatures and timing, of how the great hearth must be managed to cook so many dishes at once. The roasting spit will need to be turned constantly, and boys will be assigned to this task. The pies will bake in the bread oven, which must be carefully heated to the right temperature and then allowed to cool slightly before the pies go in. These conversations happen over several days, during the quiet moments between preparing the household's regular meals. The Christmas feast exists as a kind of parallel reality, being planned and considered even as the daily work of feeding the household continues unabated. It is like watching one season gradually overlay another, the everyday routines continuing while something larger and more festive slowly takes shape around them. In the chapel, the household chaplain is conducting his own preparations. The chapel is small, a single room attached to the manor house, but it contains all the necessary elements for conducting the liturgy. The altar must be properly prepared for Christmas, draped in fine linens, furnished with the best vessels. The chaplain examines the altar cloths currently in use, noting which are becoming worn, which have small tears or stains that cannot be fully removed. He mentions this to the lady of the manor during one of her visits to the chapel for prayer. She promises that new altar cloths are being embroidered, beautiful work that will be ready well before Christmas. The chaplain is satisfied. He is a man who appreciates beauty in sacred things, who believes that the glory of God should be reflected in the care taken with every element of worship. He spends time reviewing the special prayers and readings for the Christmas season. The liturgy is familiar, unchanging from year to year. but he wants to be certain of every word, every gesture. On Christmas Day, he will conduct multiple masses, beginning with the midnight mass and continuing through the dawn. These services will be attended by the entire household and many from the village. It is his responsibility to conduct them with dignity and reverence. The days pass in this manner, each one adding its small contribution to the larger preparation. A boy is sent to the nearby forest to scout locations where the Yule log might be found. The log must be large enough to burn throughout the 12 days of Christmas, a substantial piece of wood from a suitable tree. The boy returns with descriptions of several possibilities. The head forester will make the final decision and supervise the cutting when the time comes. The lady of the manor reviews the household linens. Table linens for the feast must be clean and in good repair. The finest pieces are brought out from storage, inspected, and several are found to need washing or mending. The women of the household set to this work, washing the large pieces in the manor's laundry, a dedicated building where water can be heated in large quantities. The work is hard, physical labor that leaves the women tired and red-handed. But there is satisfaction in seeing the clean linen spread out to dry, knowing that they will grace the tables at Christmas. Some of these pieces are very old, embroidered by the Lord's grandmother or great-grandmother, passed down through generations. They carry with them the weight of tradition, the sense of connection to Christmases past and Christmases yet to come. In the village, the tenants are conducting their own preparations, simpler than those at the manor but no less important to the people involved. Each household sets aside what it can for the Christmas season. A few extra eggs are preserved. A chicken is fattened specifically for the feast. Small amounts of honey are hoarded for sweetening the Christmas ale. The village families know they will be invited to the manor for at least one meal during the 12 days. This is part of the Lord's obligation to his tenants, a demonstration of the bonds that tie the community together. But they also prepare their own modest celebrations, gathering what resources they can to mark the season in their own homes. A woman in the village is known for her skill with pastry. She begins to collect the ingredients for mince pies, tiny pastries filled with a mixture of meat and fruit. These were originally made to represent the gifts brought by the Magi to the Christ child. And though that symbolic meaning has become obscured over the years, the tradition persists. She will make these pies for her own family and also to sell to others in the village who lack the skill or resources to make them. As December approaches, the pace of preparation begins, almost imperceptibly, to quicken. There is still no rush, no frantic urgency, but tasks that have been discussed and planned now begin to be executed. The alewife starts her special Christmas brew. The forester leads a team to cut the Yule log and haul it back to the manor. The gardener begins to harvest the holly and ivy that will decorate the hall. The Yule log is a task that requires several men and a good part of a day. The chosen tree, a large oak that has fallen naturally during autumn storms, lies in the forest where it fell. It is far too large to be moved in one piece. The men spend hours sawing off a section of the trunk. A piece perhaps 7 feet long and 2 feet in diameter. This is the Yule log, massive and heavy, green wood that will burn slowly. They rig ropes and use oxen to drag the log through the forest and across the fields to the manor. It is back-breaking work, the log catching on every irregularity in the ground, the men straining against the ropes. But finally, it is positioned near the entrance to the hall, ready to be brought inside and placed in the great hearth when Christmas Eve arrives. The arrival of the Yule log feels like a milestone in the preparations. Something large and tangible now sits at the manor, a physical manifestation of Christmas's approach. The servants eye it as they pass, thinking about the labor of getting it inside and positioned in the hearth, thinking about the warmth it will provide throughout the 12 days of celebration. The gardener's work is more delicate. He moves through the manor's grounds with his cutting tools, selecting the best branches of holly and ivy. The holly must have plenty of berries, bright red against the dark green leaves. The ivy should be long and trailing, suitable for winding around pillars and along the edges of tables. He cuts carefully, taking what is needed, but not so much that the plants are damaged for future years. He brings armfuls of greenery to the hall, where they are laid out on the floor. The lady of the manor and her women will oversee the actual decorating. But for now, the materials are simply gathered, their fresh scent filling the hall. The smell of evergreen is clean and sharp. A reminder of the natural world even as winter closes in. The kitchen has become increasingly busy. The cook and her assistants are preparing components of the feast that can be made in advance. Pastry dough is mixed and allowed to rest. Stocks are prepared, long-simmered broths that will form the base for sauces and soups. Dried beans are soaked, ready to be cooked. Each task is completed methodically, with the careful attention that prevents waste and ensures quality. The cook has created a schedule, a mental timeline of when each dish must be started, when each component must be ready. On Christmas Day itself, the kitchen will be a controlled chaos of heat and activity. But now, in these preparatory days, there is still time to work carefully, to ensure that each foundational element is properly prepared. The manor's chickens are being fed extra grain, fattening them for the feast. Someone must monitor this carefully to ensure they gain weight, but do not become so fat that the meat becomes unpalatable. It is another small skill, one of hundreds, that collectively make a successful Christmas celebration possible. The boy assigned to care for the chickens takes his responsibility seriously, measuring out the grain, watching the birds as they eat. In the manor's cellars, the steward is taking inventory of the wine that was delivered from the market. The casks have been properly positioned, allowed to settle after their journey. He draws a small sample from one, checking that it has not spoiled in transport, that the merchant's promises about quality were honest. The wine is good, perhaps even better than he had hoped. He makes a note to remember this merchant for future purchases. As the first week of December passes, the household has fallen into a rhythm of preparation that feels almost meditative. There is much to do, but there is still time. The work proceeds steadily, each person knowing their role, each task flowing into the next. The manor has been preparing for Christmas in this same way for generations. The current steward learned from his predecessor, who learned from his, stretching back through time. There is comfort in this continuity, in knowing that these same tasks have been performed by countless others who came before. The Christmas preparations are not just about the feast itself. They are about maintaining tradition, about honoring the past while creating the present, about ensuring that the patterns of celebration continue unbroken into the future. The second week of December brings with it a subtle shift in the household's energy. What had been theoretical planning is now becoming concrete action. The decorating of the hall must be completed soon. The animals to be slaughtered for the feast must be selected, and the work of butchering begun. The timeline that has existed comfortably in the future is now pressing closer, demanding attention. The lady of the manor summons her women to begin the decoration of the hall. They gather early one morning, when the light is still grey and uncertain. The hall has been thoroughly cleaned, the old floor rushes swept out and burned, the flagstones beneath scrubbed with water and stiff brushes. The stone floor is cold and bare now, waiting for the fresh rushes that will be laid down and the greenery that will transform the space. Fresh rushes are brought in from the manor's storage, where they have been drying since they were cut from the marshy areas near the stream in late summer. The women spread them across the floor in a thick, even layer. Mixed among the rushes are bundles of dried lavender and sweet woodruff, herbs that will release their scent when stepped upon. The hall begins to smell like summer preserved, like fields and flowers, a strange counterpoint to the December cold outside. With the floor prepared, the women turn their attention to the evergreen branches that the gardener has provided. Long trails of ivy are wound around the wooden pillars that support the roof of the hall. The ivy's dark leaves and tendrils create a living decoration, bringing the forest inside. The work requires patience, winding the stems carefully, securing them so they will not come loose during the celebrations. Holly branches are placed above the doorways and windows. The bright red berries stand out vividly against the grey stone walls and dark wood. There is an old belief, rarely spoken aloud in this increasingly Christian age, that holly brings good luck, that its evergreen nature represents the persistence of life through the dark months. Whether the women decorating the hall believe this, or simply follow tradition, is unclear. Perhaps for them, as for many, the line between belief and tradition has blurred beyond distinction. The lady of the manor supervises the work with a careful eye. She adjusts the placement of branches, ensuring a pleasing symmetry. Too much greenery, and the hall feels cluttered, oppressive. Too little, and it fails to capture the festive spirit. There is an art to this, a balance that must be struck. She has been overseeing Christmas decorations for many years now, and her eye has grown practiced at finding the right measure. Pine boughs are brought in and arranged along the edges of the high table where the Lord and his most important guests will sit. The scent of pine is sharp and resinous, cutting through the other smells of the hall. It is a clean smell, a winter smell, and it mingles with the lavender in the rushes and the wood smoke from the hearth. Some of the younger women express a desire to make more elaborate decorations, perhaps weaving the ivy and holly into wreaths or creating more complex arrangements. The lady considers this but ultimately decides against it. The decorations should be beautiful but not ostentatious. They should enhance the hall without overwhelming it. Simplicity, she believes, is more elegant than excess. While the hall is being decorated, other work proceeds elsewhere in the manor. The butcher has arrived from the village, a man with the necessary skills and tools to slaughter and process the animals that have been selected for the feast. This is skilled work, not to be left to unskilled servants, and the Lord pays well for the butcher's services during the Christmas season. The butcher works in one of the outbuildings, a space set aside for this purpose. The cattle chosen for slaughter are led one by one to him. The killing is done quickly and efficiently, with as little suffering to the animal as possible. This is not cruelty, but necessity. And the butcher is experienced enough to make the process swift. The carcasses are then hung to cool and age slightly, improving the texture and flavor of the meat. The work of butchering takes several days. Each animal must be carefully processed, the valuable cuts separated from the lesser ones, the organs and offal set aside for different uses. Nothing is wasted. The blood is collected for black pudding. The intestines will become sausage casings. The bones will be boiled for stock. Even the hides are carefully preserved to be sold or used. The cook inspects each cut of meat as it is brought to her, determining which will be roasted, which stewed, which used in pies. She has clear ideas about how each piece should be prepared, based on the quality of the meat and the dishes she has planned. The best roast will be presented whole at the feast, carved at the table. Lesser cuts will be minced with spices and fruits for pies. In the manor's dairy, the dairy woman is working with the milk from the manor's cows to produce butter and cheese for the feast. The butter must be very fresh, churned only a day or two before Christmas. The cheese, however, requires more time, and she has been making special Christmas cheeses for weeks now. These are smaller and richer than the everyday cheeses, flavored with herbs or wrapped in cloth soaked in wine. She works with practiced rhythm, her hands knowing the feel of curds at the perfect moment for cutting, the texture of butter when it has been churned enough. This knowledge is not written down anywhere. It exists in her hands, in her instincts, learned over years of daily work. She takes pride in her skill, in the quality of the butter and cheese that comes from her dairy. The head baker has begun work on the special Christmas breads. These are finer than daily bread, made with wheat flour rather than the mixed grains used for ordinary loaves. Some are flavored with honey and spices, others studded with dried fruits. The bread oven is fired to a precise temperature, and the loaves are carefully watched as they bake, pulled out at exactly the right moment when they are golden and fragrant. The smell of baking bread fills the manor, drifting from the bakery to the other buildings. It is a welcoming smell, promising warmth and nourishment. Even those who are not directly involved in preparing the bread find themselves drawn to the bakery, enjoying the warmth of the ovens and the comfort of the familiar scent. The steward is managing the arrival of additional supplies. Merchants who promised delivery have begun to appear, their carts bringing wine casks, barrels of flour, sacks of dried peas and beans. Each delivery must be checked against the original order, counted and inspected before being accepted. This is tedious work, but it is necessary. An unscrupulous merchant might shortchange an order, counting on the busyness of the season to prevent careful checking. The wine casks are taken directly to the cellars, where they are positioned and left to settle. The flour is stored in a dry room, protected from moisture that might cause it to spoil. The dried goods are placed in sealed containers, safe from pests. The steward makes notes of each delivery, updating his careful accounts, calculating the cost against the budget he has been given. In the evenings, after the day's work is done, the household begins to gather in the hall for longer periods than is usual. There is a sense of anticipation building, a feeling that something special is approaching. Some of the servants have begun to sing as they work. Traditional songs whose words have been passed down for generations. The songs are not yet Christmas carols, not exactly, but they carry a festive spirit. One evening, the Lord calls for music after the evening meal. A few members of the household have skill with instruments. A young man who plays the pipe, an older servant who knows his way around a small drum. They perform simple tunes, folk melodies that everyone knows. Some of the household begin to dance, simple steps in a circle, holding hands and moving to the rhythm. The lady of the manor watches with pleasure. This is what Christmas should be, she thinks. Not just the religious observance, important as that is, but also this. People coming together, sharing warmth and music and simple pleasure in each other's company. The decorations and the feast are the framework, but this human connection is the true substance of the celebration. As the middle of December passes, the chaplain increases his own preparations. He has been conducting additional services, special prayers appropriate to the Advent season. The faithful of the household attend these services, though attendance is not as high as it will be at Christmas itself. The chapel is cold in December, the stone walls holding the chill, even when candles and bodies fill the small space. The chaplain speaks about the meaning of Christmas, the significance of the incarnation, God becoming flesh and dwelling among humanity. His theology is straightforward, not sophisticated by the standards of great church scholars, but sincere. He believes deeply in what he preaches, and that belief comes through in his words and manner. He has been rehearsing the liturgy for Christmas Day, practicing the elaborate rituals that will mark the midnight mass. There are specific prayers, specific gestures, specific timings that must all be correct. He works through these alone in the chapel, moving through the motions, speaking the words softly to himself. The rituals are meant to be performed before an audience, but he rehearses in private, ensuring that when the moment comes, everything will flow smoothly. The manor's children have become increasingly excited as Christmas approaches. For them, the holiday means freedom from their usual lessons and duties, along with the promise of special foods and perhaps small gifts. They run through the manor, getting underfoot, earning gentle reprimands from adults who are busy with preparations. But even the reprimands are mild. It is Christmas season, after all, a time of indulgence and happiness. The older children are recruited to help with various tasks. They can run errands, carry messages, assist with simple preparations. The younger ones are mostly kept out of the way, but they observe everything with wide eyes, absorbing the rhythms of Christmas preparation, learning how it is done so that when they are older, they will know their own roles. In the village, similar preparations continue on a more modest scale. Families have cleaned their cottages, such cleaning as is possible in small, crowded spaces with dirt floors and smoky central hearths. They have gathered what greenery they could find, bringing small touches of decoration into their homes. The preparations are simpler, but the spirit is the same. A desire to mark the season as special, as different from ordinary time. The village women have been cooking and preserving, just as the manor's cook has been. Their resources are more limited, but they work with what they have. A special pottage with a little meat in it, a luxury. Small cakes sweetened with honey. Ale that has been carefully brewed and set aside for Christmas drinking. The village children listen as their parents and grandparents tell stories about Christmases past. These stories blend history and legend. real memories, and traditional tales, until it becomes difficult to separate what actually happened from what has been embellished over years of retelling. But the truth of the stories is not in their factual accuracy. It is in the values they convey, the sense of continuity they create, the way they connect the present generation to those that came before. As the days move toward the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, there is a sense of natural rhythm aligning with the religious calendar. The old pagan celebrations of the solstice, of the sun's return, have been absorbed into Christmas, but have not entirely disappeared. They exist as an undercurrent, rarely acknowledged, but deeply felt. The return of the light, the promise of spring in the depths of winter. These themes resonate whether one explains them through Christian theology or older beliefs. The weather has turned colder. Frost clings to the grass well into the day. The manor's ponds have begun to freeze around the edges. The household rises in darkness and works through the short hours of daylight, then continues by candlelight into the long evenings. But there is warmth indoors, fires in the hearths, the body heat of people gathered together. The coal makes the warmth more precious, the light more valued. The preparations continue, each day bringing the household closer to Christmas. There is still much to do, but the largest tasks are complete. The ingredients are assembled. The decorations are in place. The schedule is set. What remains is the final, intense period of cooking and preparation that will occupy the days immediately before Christmas itself. But for now, in these middle days of December, there is still time to work carefully to ensure that each detail is attended to properly. The household moves through its tasks with the calm confidence that comes from following a well-established pattern. This is how Christmas has always been prepared. This is how it will be prepared this year. And in that continuity, there is deep satisfaction. The third week of December brings the preparations into their final, most intensive phase. What has been planned must now be executed. What has been gathered must now be transformed into the feast itself. The manor house pulses with activity, though still it maintains a certain measured quality. There is no panic, no chaos. Instead, there is focused, purposeful work. The kitchen becomes the center of all activity. The cook has taken complete command of this domain, and even the lady of the manor defers to her expertise when it comes to the preparation of food. The cook's assistants arrive before dawn, when the stars are still bright and cold in the winter sky. The first task each day is to build up the fires in the great hearth, bringing the kitchen to a temperature where work can proceed comfortably. The hearth is the heart of the kitchen, a massive stone structure that can accommodate multiple pots and has a rotating spit for roasting meats. The management of this fire is an art in itself. Different parts of the hearth maintain different temperatures. The cook knows instinctively where to place each pot, where the heat is most intense, where it is gentler. She orchestrates the fire as a musician might conduct an ensemble, adjusting, repositioning, maintaining the precise conditions needed for her work. The preparation of the Christmas pies begins several days before the feast. These are substantial creations, large enough that each pie might feed a dozen people. The pastry must be made in batches, the dough mixed and rested, then rolled out on the large wooden work table that dominates the kitchen. The cook's hands are strong from years of kneading bread, and she works the dough with practiced efficiency. The fillings for the pies are complex mixtures of meats and fruits, spices and honey. Beef and mutton are minced together, mixed with raisins and currants, flavored with pepper and cinnamon, sweetened with honey. The combination might seem strange to modern sensibilities, but in medieval cookery, the line between sweet and savory is often blurred. The spices are expensive, a statement of the household's wealth, and their use in generous quantities marks these dishes as special. Each pie is assembled carefully. The bottom crust is laid into a large pie dish. The filling is added mounded high. The top crust is positioned and the edges crimped shut, sealing in the precious filling. Small cuts are made in the top to allow steam to escape during baking. The finished pies are substantial things, heavy and dense, requiring 2 people to lift them into the bread oven. The bread oven has been fired to the correct temperature, a precise heat that can only be judged through experience. Too hot and the crusts will burn before the filling is properly heated. Too cool and the pies will take too long to bake, becoming soggy. The cook tests the temperature by throwing a handful of flour onto the oven floor and watching how quickly it browns. When the color is just right, she knows the oven is ready. The pies go in one by one, slid onto the oven floor with long wooden peels. Then the oven door is sealed and the waiting begins. The pies will need several hours to bake properly. During this time, the cook and her assistants turn their attention to other tasks. There are puddings to prepare, custards to make, sauces to simmer. The Christmas pudding is a special dish, rich with eggs and cream, sweetened with honey, flavored with spices. It will be boiled in a cloth, a slow process that requires constant attention to ensure the water does not boil dry. One of the younger assistants is assigned to watch the pudding pot, adding water as needed, keeping the fire at a steady temperature. It is a task that requires patience rather than skill, but it is nonetheless important. In another part of the kitchen, preparations are underway for the meat dishes that will be the centerpiece of the Christmas feast. The best cuts of beef and mutton have been selected, large roasts that will be cooked on the turning spit over the open fire. These must be carefully prepared, trimmed of excess fat, seasoned with salt and herbs. Each roast is wrapped in a net to help it maintain its shape during the long cooking process. The roasting spit is a substantial piece of equipment, a long iron rod that can accommodate several large roasts at once. It is positioned over the hottest part of the hearth, where it will slowly rotate, turned by a boy whose job is to keep the meat moving steadily. This is hot, tiring work, and the boys assigned to turn the spit will work in shifts, relieving each other regularly to prevent exhaustion. The cook inspects everything with a critical eye. The temperature of the fire, the color of the meat as it begins to roast, the consistency of the pudding mixture, the crust of the pies when they are withdrawn from the oven, golden and fragrant. Nothing escapes her notice. She has prepared Christmas feasts for many years, and her standards are exacting. While the major cooking proceeds, other members of the kitchen staff are preparing the lesser dishes that will accompany the main courses. Vegetables that have been stored since autumn are brought out, inspected and prepared. Turnips and parsnips are peeled and diced. Dried peas are soaked and then boiled until soft. Onions are chopped for flavoring stocks and stews. The scent of cooking fills not just the kitchen, but the entire manor. The smell of roasting meat, of baking bread, of spices and honey. all blend together into a perfume that is unmistakably that of Christmas. People going about their other tasks pause to breathe deeply, savoring the promise of the feast to come. The children are particularly affected, drawn repeatedly to the kitchen despite being shooed away by the busy cooks. The steward has his own tasks during these final days. The hall must be prepared to receive guests. The tables must be positioned, the benches arranged, the high table where the Lord will sit prepared with particular care. Fresh linens are brought out, the finest that the household possesses, white cloth embroidered with colourful threads. These are spread over the tables, transforming them from their everyday appearance. The placement of guests at the Christmas feast is a matter of some delicacy. Social hierarchy must be respected, with the most important guests seated near the Lord at the high table, lesser guests arranged at the lower tables according to their rank. The steward has a mental map of who will sit where, adjusted slightly as new information arrives about exactly who will attend. A lord from a neighbouring estate has confirmed his presence, requiring adjustments to ensure he is seated appropriately. A local merchant who was expected has sent word that he cannot attend, opening a space that can be filled by someone of lesser importance. These considerations might seem trivial, but in the medieval world, such matters of precedence and respect are taken very seriously. To slight someone by seating them inappropriately could cause genuine offence, creating tensions that might persist long after Christmas has passed. The steward manages these issues with diplomatic skill, his solutions generally satisfying everyone involved. The chapel has been prepared for the Christmas services with particular care. The altar is draped with the new linens that the ladies' women have been embroidering. Fresh candles, pure beeswax, are positioned in the candlesticks. The chapel has been thoroughly cleaned, every surface polished, every corner swept. The chaplain has laid out his finest vestments, special robes worn only for the most important holy days. The chaplain himself has been fasting in preparation for Christmas, eating only small, simple meals, spending extra hours in prayer. This is his way of marking the season as sacred, of preparing himself spiritually for the services he will conduct. He looks gaunt now, his face thin, but his eyes are bright with anticipation. Christmas is the culmination of the church year, the celebration of God's greatest gift to humanity, and he feels the weight and joy of that significance. In the manor solar, the lady has been making final preparations for the gifts that will be distributed during the Christmas season. Medieval Christmas is not characterized by the elaborate gift-giving that will develop in later centuries. But there is a tradition of small presents, tokens of affection and respect. She has prepared packages of ribbons and sweet-smelling sachets for the women of the household. Small purses containing a few coins for the male servants. For special guests, more substantial gifts have been arranged. A fine knife for the lord from the neighbouring estate. A piece of embroidered cloth for his wife. These gifts are calculated to please without being so grand as to create an obligation that would be awkward to repay. Gift-giving in the medieval world is a complex dance of generosity and propriety, and the lady navigates it with the skill that comes from years of experience managing a noble household. The children of the household are promised small gifts as well, simple toys or sweet treats. A carved wooden horse for one boy, a pretty ribbon for a girl. These gifts are not elaborate, but they will be treasured, the physical manifestation of the Christmas spirit of generosity and joy. As December 24th approaches, the pace of work intensifies subtly. There is more to be done than time to do it, or so it seems. Though in fact, the cook and steward have timed everything perfectly. This sense of gentle pressure is intentional, creating a productive urgency without descending into stress or disorder. The household works together with increasing cohesion, each person aware of their role, each task flowing naturally into the next. The evening before Christmas Eve, the household gathers for a final meeting. The steward reviews the schedule for the next 2 days. The chaplain speaks about the religious significance of what they are about to celebrate. The Lord addresses everyone, thanking them for their work, expressing his pleasure in the preparations that have been made. His words are brief but sincere, and the household receives them with quiet satisfaction. That night, as people retire to their chambers, there is a sense of readiness mixed with anticipation. The preparations are nearly complete. The feast is almost upon them. Tomorrow, Christmas Eve, will bring the final touches, the last details. The moment when all the work of these past weeks comes together into the celebration of Christmas itself. The manor settles into its nighttime quiet. But the quiet has a different quality now. It is not the stillness of ordinary nights, but rather a pause before something significant begins. In the kitchen, embers glow in the great hearth, banked carefully to preserve the fire through the night. In the chapel, candles burn before the altar, never fully extinguished. In the hall, the decorations cast strange shadows in the dim light of a single lantern. Outside, the December night is cold and clear. Stars blaze in the dark sky, distant and brilliant. The world sleeps in the depths of winter. But in the manor house, there is warmth and life and the promise of celebration. Christmas is coming, arriving on its own schedule, inevitable and welcome. Christmas Eve dawns cold and bright. The household rises earlier than usual, though no one has mandated it. There is simply too much to do, too much excitement building for anyone to sleep late. The kitchen fires are built up to a roaring intensity. The final cooking begins in earnest. The great roasts of beef and mutton go onto the turning spit, positioned carefully over the hottest part of the fire. The boys who will turn the spit take their positions, beginning the steady, monotonous rotation that will continue for hours. The cook inspects the meat regularly, noting the progress of the cooking, adjusting the position of the spit to ensure even heat. As the meat cooks, fat drips into pans positioned beneath, sizzling as it hits the hot metal. This fat will be saved, used to baste the meat and to flavor other dishes. The kitchen is overwhelmingly hot now, the fire's at full intensity, multiple dishes cooking simultaneously. The cook and her assistants move through the space with practiced efficiency, each knowing their tasks, each trusting the others to do theirs. There is no time for conversation, only the focused concentration of skilled workers engaged in complex labor. The pies that were baked earlier are being reheated gently, brought up to the perfect temperature for serving. The puddings are finished, their cloth wrappings removed to reveal the dark, rich mixtures inside. Sauces are being completed, thickened with breadcrumbs, flavored with wine and spices. Every detail is attended to, every dish brought to its peak of readiness. In the hall, final preparations are being made. The tables are set with care, each place marked with a trencher, a thick slice of stale bread that will serve as a plate. Cups are positioned, knives laid out. Medieval dining does not include forks, and spoons are used mainly for liquids. Most people will eat with their fingers and their personal knives, a practice that requires skill to do elegantly. The high table is set with particular attention. Here, the trenchers are made of pewter rather than bread. The cups are of finer quality, some of glass, others of silver. The napkins are larger and more elaborately folded. Every detail communicates a higher status of those who will sit at this table. The Yule log, which has been waiting near the entrance to the hall for days, must now be brought inside and positioned in the great hearth. This is a task that requires multiple strong men and careful coordination. The log is massive, far too large for 2 or 3 people to manage. Ropes are secured around it, and a team of servants begins the slow process of dragging it across the threshold and into the hall. The work proceeds in stages, with frequent pauses to adjust the ropes and check the progress. The log must not damage the doorway or the floor rushes. It must be positioned precisely in the hearth, aligned so it will burn evenly throughout the 12 days of Christmas. The men work with patient determination, their breath visible in the cold air, sweat appearing despite the winter chill. Finally, the log is in position, set into the great hearth that dominates one end of the hall. It fits perfectly, as if it had been made for this exact purpose. The men stand back, admiring their work, breathing heavily from the exertion. The steward inspects the placement and nods his approval. The Yule log is ready, but it will not be lit until tonight, when the Christmas celebrations formally begin. For now, it rests in the hearth, a dark presence waiting to become fire and light and warmth. There is something symbolic about the log, the transformation it will undergo, the light it will bring into the darkest time of the year. These symbolisms are old, older than Christianity, reaching back to beliefs and practices that have been absorbed into Christmas, but never entirely erased. The lady of the manor inspects the decorations one final time, making minor adjustments. A branch of holly is repositioned slightly. An ivy tendril is tucked back into place. She steps back and considers the overall effect. The hall looks festive but dignified, decorated in a manner appropriate to a noble household. She is pleased with what has been achieved. In the village, the tenants are also making their final preparations. They will come to the manor this evening for Christmas Eve celebrations, then return again tomorrow for the Christmas Day feast. Their best clothes have been cleaned and mended, simple garments but worn with pride. Children have been scrubbed and combed, warned about proper behavior in the Lord's presence. The village families bring small gifts for the Lord, tokens of respect and gratitude. A farmer brings a fine chicken, the best from his flock. Another brings a small cheese, carefully made. These gifts are not required, but they are traditional, a recognition of the bonds of obligation and mutual responsibility that link lord and tenant. The Lord will receive these gifts with gracious thanks, though they are of little real value to him. The value lies not in the objects themselves, but in what they represent. As afternoon fades toward evening, the manor's activities reach a crescendo. The cook is making final adjustments to dishes, tasting, seasoning, perfecting. The steward is conducting a final review of all arrangements, checking each detail against his mental list. The chaplain is in the chapel praying, preparing himself for the services he will conduct. The lord and lady are in their chambers, dressing in their finest clothes. The lord wears robes of rich fabric, deep colors appropriate to the season. The lady's dress is elaborate, with embroidered trim and a headdress that marks her status. They dress slowly, ceremonially, aware that tonight they represent not just themselves, but their entire household, their position in the social order. As darkness falls, the first guests begin to arrive. Nobles from neighboring estates, dressed in their own fine clothes, riding horses with decorated bridles. They are welcomed formally at the manor's entrance, their horses led away to be cared for. They are offered warm, spiced wine to drive away the cold of their journey, then escorted to chambers where they can refresh themselves before the evening's festivities begin. The villagers arrive as well, not on horseback, but on foot, walking up the track from the village to the manor house. They gather outside the hall, talking quietly among themselves, waiting to be invited inside. The steward appears and gestures for them to enter. They file in, their eyes wide at the decorations, the warm firelight, the smells of feast preparation that fill the air. The hall is nearly full now. Servants are lighting candles, dozens of them, creating a warm glow that transforms the space. The Yule log still sits unlit in the great hearth, but smaller fires have been kindled in the side hearths, providing warmth. The contrast between the cold darkness outside and the warm brightness inside is striking, almost magical. The chaplain appears, wearing his finest vestments. He moves to the center of the hall and raises his hands for silence. The conversation dies away. Everyone turns their attention to him. He begins to speak, his voice carrying clearly in the now quiet hall. He speaks of the significance of this night, of the birth that will be celebrated tomorrow, of the light that has come into the darkness. His words are familiar, the same themes that are spoken every year, but they carry weight nonetheless. This is a holy time, a sacred time, and his words help everyone present to remember that fact. When he finishes speaking, he leads the household in a prayer. Heads bow. The words of the prayer rise up, spoken together. A collective acknowledgement of faith and gratitude. Then the moment comes to light the Yule log. The Lord himself performs this task, using a brand saved from last year's log to kindle this year's fire. The symbolism is clear. The continuity of celebration from year to year, the unbroken chain of Christmases stretching back through time. The old wood catches quickly, flames licking up the sides of the massive log, and soon the great hearth is blazing with warmth and light. The household watches the lighting of the Yule log with satisfaction. It is the final major ritual of Christmas Eve, the act that formally begins the 12 days of celebration. With the log lit, burning brightly, Christmas has truly arrived. The evening meal on Christmas Eve is substantial, but not the full feast that will come tomorrow. There is roasted fowl, bread, cheese, pies both savory and sweet. The tables are laden with food, more than most of the villagers see in a week of ordinary meals. People eat with appreciation, savoring flavors and textures, enjoying the abundance. Wine and ale flow freely. The Lord has opened his best stores for tonight, and cups are refilled generously. Conversation becomes louder, more animated, as the evening progresses. The social hierarchies that govern everyday life are still present, but softened slightly. It is Christmas Eve, a time of fellowship and goodwill. After the meal, there is entertainment. Musicians play and some of the household dance. The dances are simple, circular patterns where everyone holds hands and moves together to the rhythm. There is laughter, genuine joy, a sense of community that transcends the normal social divisions. The Lord and Lady participate, dancing with their guests, with the members of the household. Their presence in the dance is significant, a demonstration that tonight, on Christmas Eve, everyone is brought together in celebration. The normal distances of rank and status are not erased, but they are bridged, temporarily, by the spirit of the season. As the evening grows late, the chaplain announces that those who wish may attend midnight mass in the chapel. This is a special service, the first of the Christmas masses, and many of the household choose to attend. They file out of the warm hall into the cold night, walking the short distance to the chapel. The chapel is bright with candles, their light reflecting off the polished altar vessels. The chaplain begins the service, his voice solemn and reverent. The Latin words of the liturgy rise and fall, rhythmic and ancient. Even those who do not understand the language can feel the power of the ritual, the connection it creates to centuries of Christian worship. The service lasts for over an hour, prayers and readings and the celebration of the Eucharist. When it concludes, the congregation files out into a night that has grown even colder. The stars are brilliant overhead, the air so crisp it seems to crackle. People hurry back to the warmth of the hall or to their own chambers, pulling their cloaks tight against the chill. In the hall, the Yule log is still burning strongly. A few people remain here, sitting near the fire, talking quietly or simply enjoying the warmth. The evening's festivities have wound down naturally. People are tired, full of food and wine, ready for sleep. But there is also a sense of anticipation. Tomorrow is Christmas Day. The peak of the celebration and the great feast awaits. Slowly the hall empties. Servants bank the fires in the side hearths, but leave the Yule log burning. It will not be allowed to go out for the entire 12 days of Christmas. Someone will always be assigned to watch it, to add smaller pieces of wood to keep it burning. The great log itself will smoulder slowly, its massive size ensuring it lasts the full period. The manor settles into sleep, but it is a different sleep than usual. Tomorrow will bring the greatest celebration of the year. The weeks of a preparation will culminate in a single day of feasting and joy. As people drift off, wrapped in their blankets against the cold, they carry with them the warmth of the evening's fellowship and the promise of tomorrow's celebration. Outside, the winter night is still and cold. Inside the manor, the Yule log glows, a reminder of the light that persists even in the darkest season, the hope that transcends the cold and the dark, the promise of warmth and life and renewal that lies at the heart of Christmas. Christmas Day begins before dawn, in the deepest dark of the December night. The household chaplain rises first, moving quietly through the pre-dawn stillness to prepare for the day's first service. This Mass, celebrated in the hour before sunrise, is called the Angels' Mass, commemorating the announcement to the shepherds in the fields. The chaplain lights candles in the chapel, their flames steady and bright in the windowless space. Members of the household begin to gather, drawn by the sound of the chapel bell that rings softly through the manor. They come wrapped in cloaks and shawls, their breath visible in the cold air. The chapel offers little warmth beyond that provided by the bodies gathered within and the candles burning at the altar. But there is something special about attending Mass in this deep hour. something that feels appropriately reverent for Christmas Day. The chaplain conducts the service with careful attention to every ritual detail. His voice moves through the familiar Latin phrases, the congregation responding at the appropriate moments. The Mass is not long, perhaps half an hour, but it sets a tone of sacred observance for the day ahead. When it concludes, people file out into a darkness that has just begun to give way to the first grey hints of dawn. Some return to their chambers for a few more hours of sleep. Others, too excited or too engaged with the day's preparations, remain awake. In the kitchen, the cook and her assistants have never stopped working. They have been tending fires and monitoring dishes throughout the night. And now, with dawn approaching, they move into the final phase of preparation for the Christmas feast. The great roasts of meat have been cooking slowly through the night, positioned far from the fire's most intense heat to avoid burning. Now they are brought closer, the heat increased, the outside surfaces crisped and browned while the interiors remain tender and juicy. The cook inspects each piece critically, turning them, basting them with their own fat and with wine, ensuring that each roast reaches perfection. Pies are being warmed, their crusts reheated until they are crisp and fragrant. The puddings are given their final cooking, brought up to the proper temperature. Sauces are adjusted, tasted, perfected. Every dish that will appear at the feast is being brought to its peak of readiness, timed to be perfect at the moment of serving. The kitchen is a controlled chaos of heat and activity. Steam rises from boiling pots. The scent of roasting meat fills the air, along with the sweetness of spiced wine and the sharp tang of vinegar used in sauces. The cook orchestrates everything with calm authority, her voice rising occasionally to give directions, to correct a mistake, to praise work well done. In the hall, the servants are making final adjustments to the tables and decorations. Fresh candles are placed in holders. The high table is given special attention, every element checked and rechecked. The benches are positioned to accommodate the expected number of guests. Everything must be perfect for the Christmas feast. As dawn finally arrives, grey and cold, the household begins to fully awaken. Servants move through the corridors, building up fires in chambers, bringing water for washing. The lord and lady rise and dress carefully, assisted by their personal servants. Today their clothing must be particularly fine, a display of their wealth and status appropriate to the significance of the day. The second Mass of Christmas Day, the Shepherd's Mass, is celebrated mid-morning. By now, the chapel is warmer from the gathered bodies and the candles that have burned throughout the morning. More of the household attends this service, including some who missed the Angel's Mass. The chaplain conducts this liturgy with the same careful attention, his movements precise, his voice steady. Between the services, there is time for small meals, simple bread and cheese to sustain everyone through the long day ahead. The full feast will not be served until early afternoon, timed to coincide with the third and final Mass of the day. But people are already beginning to gather, guests arriving from neighbouring estates, villagers making their way up from the cottages. The manor is fully alive now, filled with people and activity. Conversation fills the corridors and the hall. Children run about, their excitement barely contained, earning gentle rebukes from adults who are themselves caught up in the festive atmosphere. The Yule log burns steadily in the great hearth, its warmth spreading through the hall. The noon Mass, the most important of the day, is celebrated with full ceremony. The chapel is crowded, people standing close together. The air thick with the scent of incense and candles and human warmth. The chaplain wears his most elaborate vestments, and the service includes all the elements of high liturgy, processions, special prayers, the singing of hymns. This Mass celebrates the mystery of the Incarnation itself, God becoming human, the infinite condensing into the finite. The chaplain's sermon speaks to this mystery, though in simple terms accessible to his congregation. He speaks of divine love made manifest, of God's gift to humanity, of the hope and salvation that Christmas represents. His words are sincere, and they move many in the congregation to tears. When the Mass concludes, the congregation processes from the chapel back to the hall, where the feast awaits. The timing has been perfect. As the last of the church-goers enter the hall, servants are beginning to bring out the first dishes. The feast is about to begin. The hall has been transformed by the presence of so many people and by the abundance of food that now covers the tables. Platters of roasted meats, whole fowl glistening with fat, pies both large and small, bowls of vegetables, baskets of bread, pitchers of wine and ale. The tables groan under the weight of food, more than the gathered company could possibly consume. The Lord takes his place at the high table, the lady beside him. Important guests are seated near them, the positioning carefully calibrated to reflect status and honor. At the lower tables, the household and village guests find their places guided by the steward's assistants. When everyone is seated, the Lord stands and calls for silence. He speaks briefly, welcoming everyone to his hall, expressing gratitude for their presence, wishing them a blessed Christmas. His words are simple but heartfelt. Then he gestures for the chaplain to bless the meal. The chaplain stands and offers a prayer of thanksgiving, asking God's blessing on the food and the gathering. When he finishes, the Lord gives the signal, and the feast begins. Servants move through the hall, carrying platters and bowls, ensuring that everyone is served. The social hierarchy is maintained even in serving. The high table is served first, the finest portions presented there. Then the lower tables receive their portions. But there is plenty for everyone, more than enough. And even those at the lowest tables eat better than they have in months. The meal proceeds with a leisurely pace. People eat slowly, savoring each dish, pausing between courses to talk and drink. The wine flows freely, cups refilled as soon as they are emptied. The ale is strong and well spiced, warming from the inside. Conversation grows louder and more animated as the meal progresses. The food is extraordinary. The roasted meats are tender and flavorful, the fat crisp and rich. The pies are masterworks of the cook's art. Their crusts perfectly browned, their fillings complex and satisfying. The puddings are sweet and rich, heavy with eggs and cream and honey. Every dish demonstrates skill and care in its preparation. Between the meat courses and the sweet courses, there is entertainment. Musicians play, their instruments adding a festive backdrop to the conversation. A juggler performs, his quick hands keeping multiple objects in the air, earning applause and laughter. A storyteller recounts a tale of King Arthur and his knights, his voice rising and falling dramatically. The feast extends for hours. Course follows course, each one appreciated, each one consumed with pleasure. People eat until they can eat no more, then rest for a while before eating again. The abundance is almost overwhelming, a stark contrast to the relative scarcity of the rest of the year. As the afternoon wanes toward evening, the feast gradually winds down. The last of the sweet dishes are consumed. The final pitchers of wine are emptied. People sit back, satisfied, talking quietly, enjoying the warmth and fellowship. The Lord makes a brief speech, thanking his household and guests, wishing them continued joy throughout the 12 days of Christmas. Gifts are distributed now, small tokens passed from lord to servants, from lady to her women, from parents to children. The gifts are not elaborate, but they are received with genuine pleasure. A purse of coins, a piece of ribbon, a small sweet cake. Each gift represents care and thoughtfulness, a tangible expression of the Christmas spirit. The evening continues with more entertainment. Dancing begins, the simple circular dances that everyone knows. Even those too full to move much participate, holding hands and moving slowly to the music. There is singing, traditional songs that everyone knows, voices blending together in rough harmony. The Yule log continues to burn, a constant presence throughout the day. Its warmth has been a backdrop to all the celebrations, its light adding to the candles that illuminate the hall. Looking at it, burning steadily hour after hour, there is something deeply satisfying about its constancy, its reliable presence. As night falls completely, some of the guests begin to depart. Those from neighboring estates make their farewells, mounting their horses for the journey home. The villagers take their leave as well, walking back down the track to their cottages, full of food and ale, carrying with them memories of the feast. But the household itself remains. And for them, Christmas is far from over. The 12 days of celebration have only just begun. Tomorrow will bring another feast. Perhaps not quite as elaborate as today's, but still far beyond ordinary meals. And the day after that, and the day after that, each one special, each one part of the long Christmas celebration. As the hall finally begins to empty, servants start the work of clearing away the remains of the feast. Platters and bowls are carried back to the kitchen. Leftover food is carefully stored or distributed to the poor who have gathered at the manor gates. The tables are wiped down. The floor rushes swept. The work proceeds efficiently, everyone knowing their tasks, tired but satisfied. The lord and lady retire to their chambers, followed by their personal servants. The remaining household members gradually disperse as well. Some to their own chambers, others to continue celebrating in smaller gatherings. The hall grows quiet, though the Yule log still burns, watched over by a servant assigned to tend it through the night. In the kitchen, the cook and her assistants finally allow themselves to rest. The work of preparing the Christmas feast is complete. Tomorrow will bring new tasks, more meals to prepare for the continuing celebrations. But tonight, they can rest with the satisfaction of work well done. The feast was a success, the culmination of weeks of careful preparation. The manor settles into the quiet of a Christmas night. Outside, the world is dark and cold, stars brilliant in the winter sky. Inside, warmth and light persist. The Yule log burning steadily, candles glowing in chambers and corridors. The celebration of Christmas continues. Will continue for 11 more days. But the peak has been reached and passed. There is deep satisfaction in this moment, a sense of completion mixed with ongoing festivity. The preparations were extensive, the work considerable, but it has all come together into something meaningful and joyful. Christmas Day has been everything it should be. Sacred and festive, solemn and joyful, a celebration that honors both God and the bonds of human community. As the household drifts towards sleep, carrying with them the warmth of the day's celebrations, there is gratitude in their hearts. Gratitude for the abundance of the feast, for the fellowship of the gathering, for the opportunity to mark this sacred day with appropriate celebration. Christmas, in all its medieval complexity and richness, has been properly observed. And tomorrow, when they wake, there will be 11 more days of celebration ahead, each one special in its own way, each one part of the larger pattern of Christmas in medieval England. But for now, on this Christmas night, there is simply rest and satisfaction and the quiet joy of a holy day well celebrated.